Hello and welcome to the Powerfish Podcast. I'm Fish.
And I'm Ben. You exist right now. You're watching this. I know it.
I know it.
I know it. And today, we're going to tell you how that very fact that you exist and are watching this right now, that fact is one of the most powerful arguments for God's existence. And the way that we're going to do that is by first telling you that change exists. Do you agree?
It took a long time of me debating that very question, but I think I've come to realization.
Change exists. Well, hey, not everybody would say that change exists. You know, if you take a B theory of time, it doesn't. If you were Parmenides,
I suppose you're right. I suppose B theory of time would say that everything happens always forever,
right?
And therefore change doesn't happen because you can't flow from one state to another if every state happens always.
Right. Exactly. So, but if you want to know what that is, check out our previous episode.
Yeah,
we talked quite.
That was
a bit
a good
about,
one.
That was a good episode. We talk about B theory of time quite a bit.
Before we get into this, I actually have something I want to show you. It doesn't specifically have to talk about what we're going to talk about today, but it does have to do with God. You're going to
show me God, are you?
Yeah, I'm going to show you God. Honestly, this is about as much of showing you God as anything else. Really.
Okay. Check this guy out. Oh, baby. What is this weapon? Oh, it's the Interlinear Bible.
I found it.
Check this bad boy out. Look at that. We've talked about this quite a bit in previous episodes. This was something that we wish we had during the debate.
Yeah.
With my brother. Yeah, this is... Oh, my God. I don't know if this is going to be a clear picture, but check that out. That's crazy. So this is the Interlinear Bible. It's got your scripture in it. It's just the Bible. But it's also got literally right next to all of the English scripture, the direct Hebrew, in the case of the Old Testament, that is, the direct Hebrew translation text of it. And above that Hebrew, it's got a literal, translation into English of that very word to word, whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's grammatically correct. It is, what does that word mean actually?
Right.
In that particular position.
Yeah, which is sick. Which is this is in perfect condition.
Yeah, I used it a little bit whenever
so sick.
I ran a youth group for a while. I used it a little bit whenever I was doing that, but I quickly realized that diving into the source language with a bunch of stupid idiot teenagers was lost on them, and honestly, it was lost on me a little bit.
Right, I mean, it was. How could it not?
So I kind of stopped using it after a while and just relied on my English Standard Bible. But
the easiest to read Bible translation ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if I could read Greek, I would say it, but the word I'm looking at means circumcision. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is so sick. I've wanted to get an Interlinear Bible for a while now, because they are some of the coolest Bibles out there. Whether you think it's true or not, they're sick.
This is a good way, if you know what you're looking at, which I know very little of what I'm looking at. It's a really good way to verify what Scripture is actually saying.
Yeah.
That's its main use case. It's because, I mean, with the translations, it always changes. Famously, the King James translation really changed stuff to kind of fit the norm that was set at the time. This is something you could do, and you could look, okay, well, you don't even really need to know Greek to know that this word is the same as this word, and these words are the same in this context, as opposed to a different word that could be there, meaning something else entirely, which certain translations don't take into account.
Right, exactly. But even with something as thorough as that, even then, there are some Hebrew words that translate into a freaking book of English words. Yeah. So even with something like that, there is still room for nudging and interpretation, but heck of a lot less if you got that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is super sick. But so on that note, the way that we're going to prove God exists today is through the argument from contingency. Initially introduced by Aristotle, proposed as the argument from change, as further refined by Thomas Aquinas, and it is mostly colloquially known as the argument from contingency today. So, like we started with, change happens. There are what we call contingent things all around us. Contingent meaning the way that it is that way because of a prior cause.
Yeah.
So there, like, this microphone is contingent because I put it here and it wasn't going to do that on its own. And it's contingent in its structure because somebody built it and it wasn't going to build itself. And that person that built this microphone is themselves contingent on their parents making them.
Right.
And those parents are themselves contingent on their parents making them. And everything around us, all matter, things, everything we look at, see, is what we would call as contingent.
And I'm sure you were going to get to this, but I'll just go ahead and get it out of the way now. What we're not talking about is a regress in time.
Well,
hand motion necessarily.
There's an important distinction to make with that respect, and I think for the sake of understanding this argument, we will actually start with a regress in time.
Interesting.
A temporal regress.
And the reason I brought that up is because not focusing on a regressive time dodges certain rebuttals. It dodges rebuttals revolving around infinite regress, and is infinite regress possible if you look at
yes.
If you look at it in a...
But I would also say it's harder to understand from the get-go.
You think so?
I definitely think so.
Oh, okay.
We'll let you be the judge
decide.
Of that. Well, you'll be the judge of it. So let's get into it. So let's get into the basics. The temporal contingency, which is pretty easily rebuttable, I would say, which is what you were talking about. Yeah. So the argument from temporal contingency is basically described as what I was just saying, things going back in time to a first cause and that happening basically indefinitely. So temporally contingent things are air in a room is cold because an air conditioner made it that way. And the air conditioner was turned on because I turned it on. And I turned it on because certain motor neurons shot. And those motor neurons shot because I was feeling hot. And everything I just named there is a temporally contingent process. But what is important here is that if a prior cause disappears all of a sudden, its effect won't go away.
Right.
So if I turn on the air conditioner and then die, the air conditioner will continue to run.
Another great example of this is generationally. If you look at the generations of a person, people.
Absolutely. Of course.
So you have a person, and then that person has a child. That person existing no longer has any bearing on if the new person can exist.
Exactly. Right. So
and then that person has a kid, and so on.
So that is the nature of temporally contingent things, is their prior cause, after the effect has been actualized. We'll get into those words a lot in a minute. But after the effect has been actualized, the cause can explode, cease to exist anymore, whatever, and the effect will continue. So, and that's important for a reason that we'll get into. But where this leads, if we follow this back in time, we get to basically the Big Bang, right? Wherever our furthest back knowledge goes. But the problem with this is you could stop here and say, therefore God, what started it all?
Yeah. What made Big Bang?
Exactly. But that fundamentally is an argument from ignorance, pretty much, because we don't know. There's a whole lot about the nature of the Big Bang that we don't know about.
Yeah.
We don't know. Like recently, Roger Penrose came out with this model called the CCC model, which is, I believe, an infinite, a temporally infinite universe where the Big Bang is not the beginning, but it instead is the end of something to do with black holes in a previous universe. But point being, it is really just out there if our universe is infinite or not in time.
That's really a trippy to think about if you really stop and think about it. Just the idea that not only is our universe incredibly old,
right, 13.8 billion years,
but also our universe could be the result of cosmic activity of a prior universe with also attached age,
right,
and so on
ad infinitum.
Yeah,
that's something that the human brain was never meant to comprehend, right? But unfortunately, the universe cares not for our comprehension of it, so it just does what it does.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with that, is the temporal contingency is basically an argument from scientific ignorance. But it doesn't stop there. So we just talked about a cause going back in time. And that is sort of what we just described it as, a temporal contingent timeline. That is not the only thing that exists as a result of a contingent thing. So this microphone is contingent in that way, but it's also contingent in its spatial location because it's being held up by this table. And this table is being held up by the ground. Now, the way this contingent sort of timeline, so to speak, differs from what we just talked about is that if the ground beneath me disappears, everything that it's holding up then goes away. Yep. It's not like the temporal contingent line because, if I turn on the air conditioner and then die, the air conditioner keeps going. And if the air conditioner shuts off, the room stays cold. This situation, if one thing at the bottom of the chain goes away, everything above that chain ceases to be.
Right.
So I've got a 50 premise argument here that really lays this out in order.
And this is what I was talking about. It's, again, with contingent upon the things supporting it. We're talking about a snapshot of a moment. This is
exactly.
This is, I mean, you can look at it any way you want, but for the sake of simplicity, at one moment in time, not relying on previous things in a temporal sense, like you just said.
Mm-hmm.
This is at one moment contingent upon sub-contingencies.
Right. And so also for the sake of clarification, the cause and effect of contingent items is going to make more sense if we refer to it as a contingent item, a contingent substance has potential to be or do something else. Just back to the microphone example, the microphone's potential to be 3 feet off the ground right now is actualized by the table. And the table's potential to be aloft right now is actualized by the floor. And if the floor disappears, the potentials for the microphone to be here is gonna collapse.
This was a really interesting thing when reading the reading material that we read. What was really interesting when they made the distinction between potential and non-potential, because it's kind of a floating word of it's potential. It's
pretty abstract.
But what it really is what is it possible for it to do?
Right. Potential. Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it is. And so you couldn't say the microphone has potential to turn into a chicken.
Right.
You couldn't do that.
The microphone doesn't have that potential.
It doesn't have the potential, but it does have the potential to
be over here.
Be there where
the potential for this microphone to be moved slightly to my right was just actualized by me and back.
So basically, when we're saying things, I know we just introduced the concept of potentiality, but now I'm going to sidestep it again and say, if that's a weird concept to you, just think of it as a thing that it's possible to do that requires something else to make that possible.
That was not simplified.
Let me think about this again here. A potential.
What you just said was not simple in any way, shape, or form.
The potential of an item is what is possible for it to be, in so much as something else making that possibility a reality.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that's correct. I don't know if it's more simple.
I am really on the fence on if that is a simplified version
Throw
of it.
in the bin. It's get rid of it.
Moving on slightly, adjacent that. So potential can only be actualized by something already actual. Okay? So we'll go back to the temporal chain. The potential of the air conditioner to be on can only be actualized by my motor neurons, which are already actual to press it. Okay? Potential cannot move from potential to actual on its own volition. It cannot go from potential to actual from something that is itself just potential, because potentiality isn't something that is, some would say, actual.
Good.
Yeah. It's not a real thing, so to speak, potentiality. So if this table no longer is actual, then the microphone that it is holding up, its potential to be 3 feet aloft, it will no longer be actual.
Yeah.
Actualized is probably a better word for that. So let's get into this actual argument.
Could you say, this is a genuine question, because and maybe a simple question. Oh, nothing's simple about it. Let's get that out of the word out. But could you say that nothing has inherently actual properties other than what we're going to talk about, obviously, but just any old whatever? Because like a microphone is a microphone, but does all of its properties by necessity require potentials to be actualized necessarily? And nothing in it is inherently actual within itself. Is that even a functional question?
I don't know, but I'm going to answer a thing that I thought I heard from your mouth.
Okay.
That may or may not have been what you actually asked. No.
I don't even remember the question. I don't know what that answers.
You asked if anything has inherent actuality within itself.
Oh, and you're saying that it cannot have. Okay.
I do not think so, no.
I'm kind of thinking that way too. I kind of feel like that's honestly the basis of the contingency argument in this.
But if that is, I don't know if that's actually true, because if nothing has actuality within itself and potentials can only be actualized by something actual, then something has to be actual. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So maybe what I just said was quite daft. And I think the answer might actually be yes.
Because things that exist need to be actual
to be able to actualize further potentials of other things.
Right, but that's isn't that not the whole point of this argument? Is that you trace back the actuality, you trace back the things that are making potentials actual back in a hierarchical sense enough that you get to God. So potentially actual. Dude, we're losing it.
I don't know what you just said, but I'm going to get to this 50 premise.
Let me basically just say what I said again.
Okay.
Real quick. Basically what I was getting at is, does anything outside of God have anything inherently actual within itself off rip of existence?
Off rip.
That was my question.
I think I'm back to my original answer. No, I don't think so.
I think I'm with you, I think.
Right. But I did confuse the entire thing by saying, but an actual thing can be the only thing that,
because the reason that even prompted me to ask that question at all was, is there just something about any particular object that is just so inherently itself that it doesn't require something else to actualize the potential of it being the thing that it is? That was really the question.
No cold starts here. We're diving straight into the hard to follow stuff. Well, I think we've closed that loop.
I think the answer is no.
No,
I think you're right.
No. So let's get premise one. Change happens. Okay.
We established this.
Change happens. I have some notes here that I wrote down on further clarification on things like this. That is coffee going from hot to cold. That is change. Or me going from standing to sitting. But I'm sitting right now, so that whatever. Just pretend. That's premise one. Premise two. Change is the actualization of a potential. So we've kind of, in a convoluted way, we got to that too.
I think through exploration, we have discovered that.
Right. So I further clarified, if this wasn't already obvious, that is, coffee had the potential to become cold when it was hot, or I had the potential to sit when I was standing. So, okay, premise three. So the actualization of potential is a real feature of the world. That's what we mean when we say change happens. Okay. So premise four, no potential can be actualized unless something already actual actualizes it. Okay.
Say that again. Say no.
No potential can be actualized unless something already actual actualizes it.
Yep. Got it.
Yeah. That's kind of what we just had a little bit of a riff-raff on.
Yep.
So the potential for the coffee to become cold was actualized by the already actual cold temperature of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Number 5, any change that is caused by something already actual.
Any change that is caused,
right,
is caused by something that's already
that's just a more
that's
a more colloquial way of saying potential actual change. Change cannot happen unless it is caused by something already actual.
You can't.
Change cannot cause itself.
The coffee can't become cold if the air conditioner is potentially on.
Exactly. Change cannot occur if the cause is a potential for the effect. It's that's unintelligible. So, number 6, the occurrence of any change presupposes something or substance which changes. Okay, so the fact that there is coffee to go from hot to cold.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there is change presupposes that the coffee exists. Okay.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. The existence of a substance at any given moment itself presupposes the concurrent actualization of the substance's current potential for existence. let me restart this. Okay. We're on premise 7, by the way. The existence of a substance, we'll say the coffee, the existence of the coffee at any given moment itself presupposes the current actualization of the substance's, coffee, current potential for existence. Okay? The coffee has potential, and one of those potentials is for it to exist right now.
And that potential is actual.
And that potential is being actualized right now because the coffee exists.
Ongoingly actual.
Concurrently, yes.
Yeah.
At every moment. Okay? That was a bit of a tougher one.
That one's a bit weird, yeah.
Yeah. So just to paraphrase this a little bit more, the existence of the coffee, the fact that the coffee is in front of us, metaphorically, in front of us existing, presupposes its potential to exist is actual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So we've got that. That's premise 7.
What exists.
Exactly. What exists is currently existing is what that one means.
And it doesn't not exist. It also says that.
Yes. Okay. Premise 8. So any substance has at any moment some actualizer of its existence.
Because
it exists. And for its potential to exist, to be actualized, it presupposes something already actual is actualizing its existence now.
Because a potential can't actualize itself.
Correct.
And because the potential to exist is being actualized ongoingly means something is actualizing that potential
For it to
externally
exist.
of itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. Love it.
All right. We're getting somewhere. All right.
I will say also, I read through all of this independently of my own, but it's so dense that it's as if I'm reading it for the first time.
Okay, yeah. So this is a 50 premises. Well, 49 premises and one conclusion for this argument. And that's a lot of premises for an argument. That's a lot. Okay? Yeah. And it's not enough to fully understand it. Because there's like 51 pages of the argument.
Yeah.
When it's more formally.
This is really the highlights.
This is the bare bones highlights. Yeah. There could be multiple minutes on like half of the premises. So, all right. Premise 9.
All right, we're getting there.
The actualizer's existence at the moment it actualizes a substance itself presupposes either A, the concurrent actualization of its own potential for existence, or B, the actualizers being purely actual.
Run it by me again.
Okay. So, coffee. We're gonna be consistent with the coffee.
Yeah.
So the coffee exists.
Mm-hmm.
We have established that the fact that it exists, it is actualizing that potential for its existence.
Yeah.
And because potential cannot be actualized by itself, it needs something already actual.
Right.
Okay. So we're on the topic of whatever is actualizing its current potential for existence.
The external factor.
Exactly. That actualizer's existence at the moment it actualizes the coffee itself presupposes that the concurrent actualization of its own potential for existence is being actualized by something else, right?
Because it's potential to actualize.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or itself is purely actual. But since we're only one layer deep, that probably isn't the case. It's probably A, that whatever is actualizing this coffee's potential to exist right now is itself actualized by something deeper.
Mm.
Okay. All right. So that's premise 9. That was another tough one.
It's one of those.
It's one of those you got to follow along. You got to think.
You got to follow along, and you got to be okay with getting your mind around it.
Yeah. All right. Premise 10. If the actualizer's existence at the moment it actualizes the coffee presupposes the concurrent actualization of its own potential for existence, then there exists a regress of concurrent actualizers that is either infinite or terminates in a purely actual actualizer.
A's existence at a moment.
Did you just pull up the premises?
Yeah, I feel like this would be easier for me to read along.
I just read premise 10.
Yeah, I'm where you are.
Okay, so I'll continue to try and paraphrase this in a way that is a little bit more understandable. So, back to the coffee. The whatever is actualizing the coffee's potential for existence, right? Itself presupposes the concurrent actualized potential of its own existence, right? Which itself presupposes, what it does is it starts a regress,
right,
of actualized potentials.
Because it'd have to.
It would have to, exactly. And it has to either go on infinitely or it has to terminate at something that is itself actual on its own.
Yeah, purely actual.
Right. So the reason why we can say this can't go on eternally, like we can say for something temporally, which may or may not be true. We don't really know if the universe is infinite, but we can say with confidence this cannot be infinite. Right? So the reason we can say that is imagine you're falling, okay, off a building, and I grab your hand, and I'm holding onto something, but I grab your hand, okay?
Yeah.
And I am being held by something, but you're blind. You ask me, that's just a necessary fact here. You're blind, you ask me, what's holding you up? And I say, well, I'm holding another person's hand. And I'm blind too. And I ask him, everybody's blind, okay? And I ask him, what's holding you up? And then he says, well, somebody's holding me up.
Yeah.
And then he asks him, well, what's holding you? And he says, well, somebody's holding me up. That can't go on infinitely.
Yeah.
We can't be stationary no matter how long it goes, even if it is indefinite.
Yeah.
Will we be able to be held up?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be holding on to something definite.
Yeah.
Okay.
And whoever that is strong.
And whoever that is has got a freaking bicep, at least. So that is why, and that is independent of time, right? If anybody along the chain breaks, then everybody following the chain after it breaks, falls. Yeah. Okay. That is why that this hierarchical contingent chain has to terminate somewhere, irregardless of time. Okay? So we have just talked about premise number 10, where we have gotten to the point of there has to be a regress of actualization.
Right.
All right, premise 11. Such a regress of concurrent actualizers would constitute a hierarchical causal series, and such a series cannot regress indefinitely, as we just explained why.
Yeah, that is the summary.
Right. So, premise 12, either the actualizer of a substance is itself a purely actual actualizer, or there is a purely actual actualizer that terminates the regress that begins with the actualization of a substance, which in this case is our coffee. Our coffee's potential to exist.
Begins in the sense...
Not begins in time.
Begins in the sense of... I guess I got tripped up on that because I'm thinking of it the other way. That it ends with the...
It ends with the coffee being actualized.
I just had that flipped in my mind.
The end point is the coffee's actualization for existence at any given moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there might be more of that language in these premises of the like begin and end. Just know that when we talk about begin and end, we are talking about hierarchical order, not temporal order. Okay.
Yeah.
There is no begin and end in relation to time regarding this.
And really, it kind of makes sense when you really think about it, because you can't have an infinite chain of these things, because, like with the coffee on the table, at some point, something has to be just permanently supported. And that's kind of what you were saying with the chain. But I guess I was just thinking, even practically, in any practical situation, that just kind of makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the chain of men or women or individuals that was just hanging is the best thing I could think of as regards to something that is irrespective of time, that is obvious, that needs to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
So, all right. Premise 13. So, the occurrence of change, in this case, the change being potential of the coffee's existence to be actualized, that change and the existence of a substance, coffee, at any given moment presupposes the existence of a purely actual actualizer.
Which is what we just determined.
Right. That was the hangman example. All right, premise 14. Therefore, there is a purely actual actualizer. All right, so that's the 14 premises that establish the groundwork for this thing. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you could stop there, and that is a pretty watertight argument.
Already you haven't proved that God in the traditional sense exists.
Right.
But you have proved that there's something going on here.
Exactly.
There's something going on here that can't be just explained through science.
Right. Something deeply fundamental, and something that does not work by the rules of cause and effect like everything in our universe that we have seen and understand does. Now, again, cause and effect is something we see within our universe, and what is true of its parts is not always true of the whole. So we can't just assume that the universe itself was caused. There's that argument. But certainly objects within the universe, the fact that they exist right now at any concurrent moment, that is a potential that is being actualized. And that actualization has to go down somewhere. Now, what that was there was something there.
So I was just thinking, I mean, I will probably get into it. Like I said, I did read through this prior, but it's just so dense that you get lost in the sauce, so to speak. But I was just thinking, not only have we already determined that there is something that is purely actual, we've also determined that everything we understand, everything we know about our universe exists in a potential state requiring actuality. And therefore,
literally everything.
Therefore, what we've also determined, a little bit, in my opinion, a little under the radar, a little discovery here, but we've also determined that what a purely actual actualizer is, by necessity, is something other than material.
Exactly.
That's exactly what we've
because material is a thing that has potential to exist.
Yeah.
Itself.
We have determined that whatever something that is purely actual is by necessity something other than
anything we ever
anything we've ever observed, and anything that makes sense in our kind of construct.
Yeah.
And
that applies for literally every single. We made the example of a cup of coffee, but that applies to literally every single atom, every single subatomic particle within an atom. Its existence is itself it has a potential to exist, and meaning it could not.
Mm-hmm.
And that potential is being actualized at any given moment.
So another way to look at this, it's not really another way. It's another framework, really. We've already entered the bounds of this purely actual actualizer could easily be construed as something of a supernatural type origin or an ethereal origin. Something.
We've gotten to the point of this thing's sus.
This thing is mad sus.
This thing's mad sus. We barely have started. I'll tell you that. We've barely started. And we've already got some real airtight stuff. So we're going to keep going. Because one might say, yeah, honestly, cool stuff, bro. But that sure ain't the God that I hear about. And they would be right.
Yeah.
And we're going to change that.
We're going to do something about that.
Okay. So, premise 15. In order for there to be two or more purely actual actualizers, there has to be a differentiating feature between one or the other. Right?
Or else they would be the same entity.
Exactly. Because if they were identical, they would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, premise 16. But there can only be such a differentiating feature if a purely actual actualizer had a potential that was unactualized.
Because change. Aha!
Which, being purely actual, it cannot have a potential. Okay? 17.
Got it.
So there can be no such differentiating feature, and therefore no way for there to be more than one purely actual actualizer. Okay?
Yeah.
There can be only one.
Yep.
Premise 18. So there is only one. Premise 19.
Polytheists be damned.
Polytheists be damned. All right? Monotheism is in full swing. Okay. I just clicked on my frickin'. Let me get back to it. Okay. 19. In order for the purely actual actualizer to be capable of change, it would have to have potentials capable of such actualization. But being purely actual, it lacks any potentials. As we just recently discovered, it cannot have any potentials because that would also open the door for a differentiating feature between two or more, which it cannot have. Okay. Premise 21. So, it is immutable, or in otherwise saying, incapable of change, or unchanging.
Yeah.
Okay. Premise 22. If this purely actual actualizer existed within time, it would be capable of change, which we just discussed. It is not capable of such change.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, this purely actual actualizer is eternal, existing outside of time, not bound by it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, premise 24. If the purely actual actualizer was material, then it would be changeable and exist in time, which it does not. So, premise 25. So the purely actual actualizer is immaterial. And that is precisely what you brought up earlier.
I was just ahead of the game.
You're just ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game. So it is by necessity immaterial, unchanging, and outside of time. We're starting to get to something familiar.
We're getting a picture going.
By necessity, all of these things.
No room for interpretation.
All right. So, premise 26. If the pure actualizer were corporeal, it would be material, which it is not. 27. Therefore, the purely actual actualizer is incorporeal.
Uh-huh.
And thus immaterial. 28. If the pure actuality were imperfect in any way, then it would have some form of unactualized potential, which being purely actual, it does not have. Because what would we define as something imperfect?
Something requiring change to become perfect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something being depraved of something to reach perfection.
That's kind of what I'm thinking is what is perfect in this aspect? Or does it even matter? Does it matter what is perfect in the sense
Well, we could debate, we could talk about things that could be perfect, but what they would all have in common is the fact that perfection and something lacking perfection is separated by change, one way or the other, no matter what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Which this thing, as we discussed, has no potential to change.
Yeah, I also feel like it's not a perfect in the sense of all good, which we'll get there.
Right.
I feel like it's almost more of a perfect sense as in a completeness,
right?
Almost.
Yeah, sure. It is 100% fulfilling in its own nature.
Yeah,
it's not missing anything. So, therefore, the purely actual actualizer is perfect. For something to be less than fully good is for it to have a privation, that is to fail to actualize some feature proper to it. In the book that we read to research for this, 5 Proofs for the Existence of God from Ed Feser, he used the description of a painter. A painter is good in so much that he is fulfilling his potential to be to paint well, and bad insofar as he's not fulfilling that potential. So, given that there are no potentials unfulfilled by this purely actual actualizer, in fact, it cannot have any potential whatsoever, it can't have this privation that would keep it from being fully good. So, premise 32, therefore, it is fully good.
For something to be less than fully good is for it to have a privation, that is to fail to actualize some feature proper to it.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. I don't know.
I'm gonna spoil a little bit here. I have a big problem with this one. I have a big problem with.
I was telling you when we were talking about this. I kind of quickly read through these prior. I didn't really stop and critically think about this. So this is my first critical pass, I would say, and I can't really put my finger on what I don't like about that. But I know that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah,
but we'll get to it.
I have a problem with that. We'll come back to it. We're gonna finish out this argument, but to the uninitiated, purely actual actualizer is fully good. Premise 33, to have power entails being able to actualize some other potentials. Any potential that is actualized is either actualized by the purely actual actualizer or by a series that terminates in the purely actual actualizer. This is what we describe literally every single atom and every single subatomic particle, proton, neutron, electron, everything has this potentiality being actualized by either the purely actual actualizer himself or a regress that terminates in the purely actual actualizer.
So we're making the claim that the act of moving from potential to actual is in and of itself power, and that power is derived from previous iterations in the chain which terminate in something that grants power to its hierarchy.
Exactly.
Got it.
Something purely actual. Okay. So, all power to do anything, all power derives from something purely actual. Okay. But to be that from which all power derives is to be omnipotent. Therefore, the purely actual actualizer is omnipotent. All powerful.
Okay, I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah. All right, premise 38. Whatever is in an effect is in its cause in some way. whether formally, virtually, or imminently.
Mm-hmm.
So let me dig into that one a little bit. This
was interesting.
This is a bit of a involved concept. So we've been talking about cause and effect, and all cause and effect is the effect is something that went from potential to actual, the cause being something already actual. Okay. So in the book, the example was for me to give, I'm giving you $20.
Sick.
Metaphorically. I'm giving you $20. The effect is you having $20.
Yeah.
The cause is me giving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that you having $20, specifically the $20, the effect,
yeah, the currency
was in me before you had it.
Correct.
Okay. Me being the cause had possession of the effect before your potential to have that effect was actualized.
Mm-hmm.
So the effect was in the cause.
Right.
And that is how he differentiates the multiple ways this could be is formally, virtually, or imminently. Formally being me having the $20 right now. I have this in my hand. Formally have $20.
You in and of yourself have the power to impart.
Yes, the
transaction.
The potential for you to have. I formally can actualize your potential to have $20.
Yeah.
Okay. Virtually can be, I don't have the $20, but my bank account, which is connected to my phone, does.
Yeah.
That is still the same thing as the effect of you having $20 is still in the cause.
Because you have the power to obtain it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And imminently,
or well, okay, let
I have it already.
Let me clarify that. Yeah, it is specifically that you don't have it with you.
I don't have it formally,
but you have it. You have it in the sense that
virtually
it is there.
Yeah, exactly. It is there to give. Now, imminently is if I had the ability to print $20 bills.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, the cause of you having $20 is imminently in the effect by way of me being able to print a $20 bill and giving it to you.
Really what that gets down to is, in essence, the starting point, how they relate to their own actuality in a way. It's like you don't formally, I suppose, have $20, but it in the sense that you have the power to obtain it and therefore it is.
Right.
If that, I don't even know if I'm making it.
That would mean I possess the cause, or excuse me, I possess the effect imminently. If I do not have the $20 formally in my hand or virtually in a bank account, I can print it imminently. I have the effect of your $20.
Would you still
imminently.
Would you still consider the actuality of you having $20 actual?
I would
that's where I'm getting at.
Formally, yes. Formally, yes.
Right.
Even virtually, I would say yes. Imminently, I would say
imminent possession actual.
Is imminent possession of a future effect an actual reality now?
And therefore, if let's say it isn't. Let's say it isn't actual. Could your actuality impart on me actuality if your actual is not yet actual and it is potential?
No. Because I would if I don't have the $20, if the $20
I guess I'm really I've got myself in a pretzel here. If you do not in actuality have $20 because it is only imminent, therefore you cannot actualize the potential of me to have $20 because in a formal sense you don't.
But what I think having the $20 imminently means is that my actual state now can actualize myself to have the $20 either formally or virtually.
So hold on. So you imminently have $20, which means that you have the ability to actualize a potential that is you having $20
formally or virtually.
Formally or virtually, which in turn would allow for the actualization of my potential to have $20.
Exactly. So
that's awesome.
Imminently have so the effect would still exist within me imminently with a bit of an extra chain going on. It seems.
And for anybody thinking that we're stupid, you're right. That's not helpful. There was nothing helpful about that. I just thought it was really funny.
And we've clarified it in case you for some reason wanted to. So we have established that, just to sand the edges on this a little bit, an effect exists within the cause. Okay? A potential for something to happen first exists within the actualizer that actualizes that potential. Okay. Got that out of the way. That was a big one. All right. The purely actual actualizer is the cause of all things.
That would have to track, yeah.
Exactly. Therefore, so the forms or patterns manifest in all the things it causes must in some way be in the purely actual actualizer.
Forms or patterns manifest in all the things it causes must be some way.
Whether that be formally, but it can't be formally. It would have to be virtually or imminently. Because if the cause was, if any material cause was in the, if any material effect was in the cause of the purely actual actualizer formally, then that means the purely actual actualizer would have to be material. Because if it was a material effect, and that effect exists within the cause formally, then the cause itself is material. But it's not. The purely actual actualizer is not material, as we have discussed. So,
I mean, you could have a non-material formal cause, couldn't you? It'd be just something purely actual. A purely actual cause, immaterial.
And what would that be? What would be the effect? What's a purely immaterial effect? So the effect is material, you're saying?
I guess now I'm confusing myself. I feel like just the act of being the cause of being actual, I suppose, produces an effect of causation. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or,
nah. So what this is saying, in so far as the forms or patterns manifest in all things it causes, means the abstractions of such things. Forms or patterns being abstractions. Triangle is so I can make a triangle with my Illuminati. I can make a triangle with my hands here.
Yeah.
And what I'm making right there is a triangle. That's a triangle.
Yeah.
You see it?
Triangle.
Now, if I draw a triangle on the table, they're different triangles.
Yeah.
But they both have the form triangle.
Yeah.
They're both the same thing. But individually, materially, they are different things. But they both have the form triangle. You and I are in the abstracted concept of man. Identically. You and I individually are not. But the abstracted concept of man, you and I both are. And that is the same. That's what it means by the form of something.
Mm-hmm.
So the abstracted concepts of all things, given that all things are themselves an effect,
Yeah.
and since effects have to be within their causes,
Yeah. You
exactly, the abstracted forms have to reside within the purely actual actualizer. Because all
yeah.
exactly. Okay? So that's
Wait, I thought that's what I said.
is
Just,
it?
just in a terrible way?
If you did it,
What I was getting at was what did I? Well, okay. First of all, what did I say? First of all,
dude,
I think
that's
I said
a question that is purely unanswerable by me.
it is answerable by people watching the video because it's gone back in time. Anyway, but
Yeah, comment what he said.
I said something to the effect of that something purely actual can have causes in itself that don't require materialism. I guess.
Material. Oh,
That's
okay.
what I was getting at. Was
it can cause a material effect without the literal material itself being in the cause.
That's what I was saying. Because I was
Yeah,
still on
got
that.
it,
I was
got
still
it.
on that $20 example, and I thought what we were getting at was the purely actualizer can't possess $20.
Exactly. It resides within the purely actual actualizer as something virtually or imminently.
Mm.
Right? Exactly.
And then I said, oh, that's right, because then I said that something formally could be within the cause, but what I was meaning was the potential that the actual that it imparts is an abstraction of something, whether formally or not, to impart upon something else.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So then you got this, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was another big one.
I take the L on that. I really didn't explain my thing myself well.
Okay. So, premise 41. These forms or patterns can exist either in the concrete way in which they exist in individual things, like I said, triangle on table drawn or triangle in my hands.
Yeah.
Or in the abstract way in which they exist in the thoughts of an intellect. Like they are both triangles. They are identical. Mm-hmm. And you and I are both identical in this respect that we are men.
Yeah.
Okay. That is the thoughts of the abstraction exists in the thoughts of an intellect.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. They can't exist in the purely actual actualizer in the same way they exist in individual particular things, because that would be material.
Oh, what? That's what we were just talking about.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
Sick. All right.
Okay. So they must exist in the purely actual actualizer in the abstract way in which they exist in the thoughts of an intellect.
I love how that's exactly
what we just talked about. We're jumping ahead. We're jumping ahead to things. Okay. So, premise 44, the purely actual actualizer has intelligence.
Okay, so it's saying that because the only things that exist within itself are in and of themselves abstractions, and abstractions are intellect, therefore intelligence. Abstractions can only exist through the mind.
Exactly.
Of an
I was gonna say there's a few more connections there, but yes, basically.
I guess. I don't. That's a little weird to make that. But I don't know.
Spoiler alert! I have a problem with that too.
Okay.
I have a problem with that. Okay. Premise 45. Since it is the forms or patterns of all things that are in the thoughts of this intellect, there is nothing that is outside the range of those thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. For there to be nothing outside the range of something's thoughts is for that thing to be omniscient.
Yep, that's true.
Premise 47. Therefore, the purely actual actualizer is omniscient. All right, premise 48. So there exists a purely actual cause of the existence of things, which is one, it is immutable, eternal, immaterial, incorporeal, perfect, fully good, omnipotent, omniscient, and intelligent.
Yeah.
Premise 49. But for there to be such a cause of things is what it is for God to exist. Conclusion. Therefore, God exists.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
There's a lot. Well, I was going to say there's a lot to unpack there. It's been unpacked.
We've been unpacking sort of as we go, but there is a lot more to unpack.
Yeah. I do think. Well, let's get straight to the first rebuttal, just the off rip. Off rip is clearly what Phaser is positing here is that what it is to be God is what it is to be his God, which is the God of
the attributes that we just named.
Yeah. The jump here is that this God is any specific God.
Okay. Let's grant every argument that we just talked about. Let's grant it all. What religion are we talking here?
Yeah.
We haven't gotten into a Trinity. We haven't gotten into the God that showed his back to Moses.
Yeah.
That's not immaterial.
Where's the back?
Where's the back?
Baby God.
He walked through the Garden of Eden. He commands things. None of that is what we just argued for.
What I can concede, if we're granting everything before it, is that these are the traditionally recognized divine attributes.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is what he's basing this claim off of.
Mm-hmm.
But this does not get us to a specific being.
This doesn't get us exactly. This gets, like I said, we're going to, for the sake of argument, grant literally everything.
Yeah.
Okay? All of those arguments. This being with all the divine attributes exists. I've said this in so many episodes, and I'm not the only one. It is so freaking hard to now jump to an organized religion.
Yeah.
That divide is just uncrossable.
Well, let's start here then. Let's start with this. Let's not make it, let's say we don't have to make the jump. What we've just discovered, though, is that something like a God exists. Theoretically.
By at least philosophical, by our greatest philosophical necessitative understanding of today.
Let me ask you this. This is a challenging question that I'm about to ask you. Prepare to be challenged. Let's say, and we don't have to imagine this, you are an atheist.
Yes. We don't have to imagine that.
You are an atheist. And let's say you are tasked with poking a hole in this, or saying, making a claim that no divine nature exists. Where do you start?
Well, it would be, you would have to, so at premise 14 is when we got to something of pure actuality has to exist.
Yeah.
You would have to butt in early. So if you're getting in early, if you stop the premise early, then everything that follows it doesn't logically follow from it. Okay?
Right.
So the way you would do that, you would have to somehow posit that this thing of pure actuality is something that we can find in nature. Now,
which we talked about how that can't happen.
Right, except there are these things called, so the closest thing that science would have to an answer like that, to a purely actual thing like that, is what's called quantum fields. So to reconcile special relativity with quantum mechanics, quantum field theory was born. And that's just special relativity, not general relativity. The gravity thing is still, that's up in the air. But with special relativity, just the whole time warping with velocity thing, that has been reconciled with quantum mechanics by way of quantum field theory. Quantum fields exist everywhere. They permeate throughout reality, in voids, all around us. Quantum fields are entirely immaterial. They are likely unchanging in time, or outside of time, or eternal. Right? They don't work like matter does. They are the basis for things like what's called virtual particles, which are particles that there's a particle and an antiparticle at all moments of time and space that just pop into existence out of nowhere, which we now know is out of a quantum field. Particle and antiparticle pop into existence and annihilate each other in 100,000ths of a second. Okay. This is the basis of, this is how Stephen Hawking discovered black holes dissipate, is when this particle and antiparticle pop into existence from a quantum field. When they happen to pop in existence with the particle being on the outside of the event horizon and the antiparticle being on the inside of the event horizon of the black hole, the antiparticle gets sucked into the black hole. And the particle stays outside as the form of Hawking radiation. And since the antiparticle gets sucked into the stuff, that is how black holes evaporate, is because over an incomprehensible amount of time, enough virtual particles will pop into existence from these quantum fields, get sucked into the black hole. The antiparticle will annihilate one particle from the singularity, and over time, enough of that will happen where the black hole will evaporate. But these quantum fields aren't unchanging. For example, they have different states in a vacuum out in space, what's called a vacuum state, and they also have what's called an excited state. I don't know where that would occur, but not in vacuums. The important part is they are changing. These quantum fields have different attributes, which is against the nature of something purely actual. Because if something can change, it means it has potential to do that change.
Yeah.
And if something has potential, it has to be actualized by something already actual. So quantum fields are something really dang close to something purely actual. Really dang close, but not quite there. And you could just say, because we don't really know a whole lot about the nature of quantum fields, but they fit criteria relating to this argument in a lot of ways. So you could just make the argument from ignorance.
Yeah.
I don't know how these things work. And the person positing God, you would say, and neither do you. But we don't know that they don't have pure actualization power. So there's no reason to go past something like a greater understanding of quantum fields to explain why everything's potential to exist is being held up right now.
Interesting.
So that's how I would go about refuting the first bit. But that's not strong. It's not strong because it's just an argument from, well, we don't actually know how the world works, basically.
Yeah.
Is how you would refute it. And that's not a super strong argument.
Right.
But I don't know how else you could refute something purely actual. And once you get past premise 14, where you establish something that is purely actual, then it gets really hard to refute a lot of the things that come after what entails with being purely actual.
Yeah, it almost is like a cat's out of the bag.
Exactly. Once you get there, a lot of the stuff just kind of just follows by necessity, but not all of it. So one of the big problems I had was premise 22. If this purely actual actualizer existed within time, then it would be capable of change, which it is not. So this purely actual actualizer is eternal, existing outside of time. This one was a little bit weird to me because just right at the start, if this purely actual actualizer existed within time, then it would be capable of change. Why?
Yeah, that's...
Why does it existing within time entail its capability of change? If we've already established that this thing is immaterial, why does it necessitate that it's capable of change just because it exists within time? And I don't see why.
Because how would they put this? The effect, I guess if it's immaterial. Well, I'm going to say what I was going to say. The effect that time has on things is in and of itself change.
Right.
Now, if it's immaterial...
But you also could say, though, instead, the effect that time has on things is the wrong way to say that. You could say the fact that things change is what gives us time.
Change is time.
Exactly. You could turn it the other way around.
You could, and I actually like that, I think. In that case... Well, but then that proves the point. It doesn't it? Because if we're saying that this entity can't change, then it then would by necessity operate outside of time and therefore be eternal. Wouldn't it be?
Not if it's immaterial.
I thought we established that a purely actual actualizer does not change already.
Yeah. But we also established that it's immaterial. And if the things that exist in our world that undergo change is material, we've never seen something immaterial change. We've never seen something immaterial.
Yeah.
So the fact that this purely actual actualizer would exist within time, it is making an assumption that it would be capable of change if it exists within time. An assumption that I don't think is justified.
I don't think that that's justified. I guess I was getting hung up on if we're spinning it the other way, in which time change is time, and if a purely actual actualizer can't change, therefore can't time.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's where I was getting. If change is time, then purely actual actualizer can't change, therefore
it is not bound or even at all relevant to time. But what that does, and that is a good point. That is a good point to justify this. But what that does is it begs the question of what is time? Is time something that's going to happen? If we take the view of change itself is what time is, which by all accounts we know is true. Like a clock doesn't measure time, it measures something that happens on a consistent basis. It measures consistency of change. Yeah. That's what a clock is. So if there was something that truly didn't change, would it still reside within time? But if it does, then that would mean time has to be something different than just the change of things. And if it doesn't exist within time.
And also, how do you think about time in an immaterial, how do you think about change in an immaterial sense? What is change?
What is an immaterial change?
Does that exist? Probably not.
Well, by way of quantum fields. Quantum fields are entirely immaterial, as all accounts that we understand. And so they have a vacuum state. They have an excited state that changes the attributes of these quantum fields that spawn particles out of your mom's ass.
Oh, that's a crazy place to spawn from.
And not only just there, but everywhere at all,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And these quantum fields are not something we can grab.
Yeah.
These quantum fields are not something we can look at a microscope under. Right. So in some way, immateriality can change.
Okay, so we've established that the immaterial can change. And that, well, we still haven't buttoned down if which came first, change or time.
Change your time, exactly. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah.
And that's, listen to our last episode. That's a can of worms.
Yeah.
So
where's that? I don't know where that leaves us.
Well, I think it leaves us at maybe that's a bit of an unjustified claim, but it also could be accurate.
As posited, as stated, I think it's a bit of a leap. I think
Perhaps.
if you squint your eyes and tilt your head at it a little bit and maybe look at it a different way, you can. I think the way I looked at it, or I think you could start to recuperate that claim a little bit.
Right.
But there's more to be said about the nature of time.
I think to make that claim be something a little bit more concrete, I think a greater understanding of the nature of time needs to be acquired, which we don't have.
Yeah.
Maybe not only just the nature of time, but the nature of immaterial things in general, probably.
Yeah.
All right, so let me move on to this fully good business.
What is this business?
So, I'll run down these few premises. If purely actual actualizer were imperfect in any way, then it would have some, that's perfect. We're going to good. If for something to be less than fully good is for it to have a privation, it is lacking something. That is to fail to actualize a feature proper to it. Okay.
Yeah.
And as we already know, being purely actual, it cannot have potentials. Therefore, it is fully good. There's a bit of a switcheroo happening around here.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's talking about for something to be less than fully good is for it to have a privation that keeps it from fulfilling a feature proper to it. Yes, something good, something fully good is something that is fully fulfilling a feature of itself. Okay, I agree with that.
Well, here's now you listen to me here. Now you listen to me when I speak this here. Now, so
I'm listening. My ears are so far open. It's crazy.
shoot, I want to make a note that it's 10:30 in the evening.
It's late. It's late, and we're talking about this.
Now I got to get back on track. What was I talking about?
Well, let me just finish. You think about that.
I'm going to think about it.
Let me finish. Let me try and finish this point here. So, if we take the word good as to mean that definition, then good can mean literally almost anything. Okay? If I fail to meet a feature of some feature proper to me, let's say in the example he used, painters.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a disc golfer. If I fail to actualize a feature proper to my disc golferness, okay, then that means I am not a fully good disc golfer. And if I do actualize the potential that is proper to my disc golfer nature, that means I am good.
Here's
Now let me get to this. Here's where the switcheroo comes on. When he comes to the conclusion, so the purely actual actualizer is fully good, he switches the meaning of good, as far as I'm reading this, to mean fully morally good.
Yeah. See, this is what
that is not the premise he set up with.
No. I remember what I was going to say. It's almost like we are conflating perfection with benevolence.
Yes. So this fully good point was constructed nearly the exact same way that the fully perfect point was constructed.
Yeah.
Except he just changed the word to good at the end.
If I am a good painter, but the way he sets it up is I have within me the qualities that make painting good. which but it good in the sense that I am without flaw,
Yes.
which makes it perfect.
Exactly. These two the perfect point and the good point were set up basically the same way, except one of them he does the switcheroo with the good. Okay,
Playing hard and fast over here.
Exactly. That I really don't like. I think I cannot find or think of any way to actually establish this purely actual actualizer as morally good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good in the way that he's presumably concluding with this premise. Because if he's not presumably concluding with the morally good part, then
Why talk about it at all?
then why say it at all? Because he already established it with the perfect point.
Yep.
Okay. He's just saying the same thing twice. So I do not like that premise and conclusion whatsoever.
It does feel like a bait and switch a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So already that, if you don't get the morally good in there, that's a huge blow to what is recognized as the God of Abraham.
Yeah.
A huge blow. Okay. And I really don't know how to actually give a purely actual actualizer moral goods.
Well, then you could start talking about, is the God of Abraham even all good?
And then we could talk. That's
I'm sorry.
a whole other episode.
That was
The God of Abraham, I would say, if you read the Old Testament, couldn't possibly be mistaken to be good, but
which only strengthens this argument.
exactly,
Which
makes this argument stronger. This is the God of the Old Testament.
Exactly.
Right. So, and then I had highlighted the intellect part. There's something in that I don't like, but I can't narrow it down.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Something was yucky. Well, hold on. I'm very curious. Let me pull that back up.
So I'll go over these premises again in terms of intellect, because this one was a little bit hard to get, because you had to first understand the effect first has to reside within the cause before the cause can actualize the potential. So, and that's even now when I think about it, I have to ponder.
Well, it was about the abstraction.
Exactly.
Also.
It was the abstraction of that thing, which there's something in there that isn't vibing with me. Maybe it's unjustified. Excuse me.
So it's the difference between something of a formal sense, of a formal material. Let's go material of a material sense. Hold on. In actuality, in a material sense, and the abstraction of that actuality, right?
Yes.
So
the form or nature.
In essence, what I think we're saying is that the fact that a purely actual being that it is by definition immaterial, and the actualizations it imparts are representative of material things, makes it
everything.
of all material.
Everything in existence, in fact.
And because it's immaterial, it has to be abstract.
Yeah.
But then here's the jump. Just because something is abstract, what they're saying is what is abstract requires intellect to conceptualize, which requires intellect.
Well, it's not quite, because the purely actual actualizer is all immaterial, and obviously there are material things being actualized, and because everything in existence requires its potential to exist to start the infinite chain leading back to the purely actual actualizer, and because the effects, everything in existence, the effect has to exist within the cause. And because the cause has to be immaterial,
in the sense of a pure actual actualizer.
In the sense of the purely actual actualizer, the effects can only exist within this cause in the abstract way.
Yeah.
And since the abstract way only exists within minds,
okay,
the purely actual actualizer has itself to be a mind or intelligent.
I feel like that's kind of what I said, but
You
because I said abstraction requires the mind, and therefore, and if the purely actualizer is
yeah, but you didn't make the connection of the fact that effects have to be within their cause.
Oh, that I assumed that because
Yeah.
we had established that. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, but point being was that is it a jump to say just because something exists in a purely actualizer abstractly that requires traditional intellect?
Exactly. That I would say when we think intelligence, I think it is a jump to go from this thing exists as, well, we'll take it the step further that this argument takes it, given the fact that nothing can exist without its abstraction of it. That means that there is nothing that does exist or can exist or has ever existed that does not reside in this intelligence, which is to be omniscient. All knowledge. Right.
But is the existence of an abstraction knowledge?
It's, so let's just say a number. That is something that, well, you could just say the same thing of like the triangle example. Numbers exist. Triangles exist, but there's also material forms of them. But would you say that the abstract form of it exists?
Yeah. Well, no. It's one exists materially? No.
No.
You can't have a material abstraction.
Exactly. That's literally just a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
But the question I asked was, does the abstraction exist?
Materially, no.
But I'm not asking about materially.
So
I know the abstraction doesn't exist materially. The abstraction itself. Does 2 + 2 = 4? The number. Does the number exist?
I feel like we had this conversation, didn't we?
We've probably had something adjacent.
We talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember where I landed on this. And I feel like I said yes. Because I think the argument I was making then was whether you think about it or not, two things on a desk is two things on a desk.
What mathematics represents certainly always exists. But
but a completely abstract number?
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't exist.
So
I think I'd have to say that.
I'm not in a concrete position on this, but if we were to say yes, we would then have to accept that if every mind living today all of a sudden died, that would still exist.
It wouldn't. An abstraction? It couldn't. And if you, it's weird to think about.
But yes, you might say that it doesn't exist, but the abstraction of 2 + 2 = 4 is true. And if we were to say that doesn't exist, if all intellects die, would that make it then false? If it doesn't even exist?
It wouldn't make it false.
But for it to be true, we have to assume that it first exists in the first place. Because 2 + 2 = 4, you're right, wouldn't all of a sudden stop being true just because all intellects that could conceptualize of the abstraction of it die away. But if it is to still be true after all intellects die, it first has to exist to be true. But it can't all of a sudden be false just because we die.
But does it time?
But does it time?
But does... Now, buckle up with me. Because we're going to go for a ride.
We are... I'm in the seat.
If the past, present, and future exist permanently and always...
Okay, so if we're assuming B theory.
If we're assuming B theory, everything that will and has existed is happening at all moments. And if an intellect thought it and it existed, at any moment in time, it exists
Throughout.
in an almost metaphysical sense. It just intrinsic to the universe exists because
So
it
if someone in... So if... Okay. Assuming B theory. If someone 500 years in our quote-unquote future, 500 years in front of where we are today, our current slice in the block, thinks of a new number or a new mathematical equation that has never previously been thought of, ever.
Yeah.
Because they did, and because every slice in the block exists concurrently, him thinking of that abstraction 500 years from our slice exists now in our slice. Because all slices exist.
I think, yes. Can you take this one step, well, back, I suppose, really? Can you say that all things that can exist do? This is what I'm getting at. Does everything... If something can exist, doesn't it? In the sense that...
Where are we at, dude?
In the sense that
Okay.
if math can exist, it does. And if math,
Yes.
and that predates intellect, doesn't it?
Yes. So therefore, the abstraction has to exist.
Yes.
And so therefore, abstractions can exist independent of intellect.
Yeah. I think if we're granting that what can exist does, then everything follows.
Which would mean that, well, if abstractions can exist void of intellect, then that removes the necessity of the purely actual actualizer having intellect for these given abstractions.
It would. Because, and that's kind of what we were getting at in the beginning. It was, why does something need to have intelligence to exist within itself, an abstraction of actuality? And I suppose what we're claiming is that it doesn't need it.
I don't. Yeah. I think that's right. Well,
so if we take that to its next logical conclusion, something at which, okay, I think I'm okay with this. Something at which all things are contingent upon does not need to be omniscient. Just because something is the foundation of all things universally, does not require that thing to know the things that is contingent upon it. Because it doesn't require intelligence. And if it doesn't require intelligence, it doesn't have it.
Huh. By way of...
Much like, now we're getting back to the material, but just ignore that part of it. Much that the foundation of a house doesn't need to know what's in the attic.
So the foundation of the house, so given that effects have to reside within the cause in some way, whether that be formally, virtually, or imminently, the effect of the attic, the potential for the attic to be there, that effect existed within the cause of the foundation of the house imminently. But as we just described,
There's cricket in here.
there is a cricket.
You can't hear it on the microphone, I'm sure, but there's cricket.
Cricket somewhere down.
So
in this
it's quiet and I'm thinking and I just
so because, and of course the foundation of the house that starts a regress back to the purely actual actualizer. So the effect ultimately of the attic does ultimately trace back into the cause of the purely actual actualizer, but obviously in a virtual or imminent way, not formally, because formally would mean it has it as material. But as we also, so the abstraction of the attic exists within the purely actual actualizer by way of it imminently existing within the foundation, and that foundation's effect imminently exists within whatever actualized it ad infinitum. Well, not infinitum, add the regress to the purely actual actualizer. The abstractions of these things all do exist within the purely actual actualizer.
right, but we already established that
Abstractions do not require intelligence.
Aha, there you go. So when I say the foundation of the house doesn't need to know the contents of the attic, in the sense of understanding,
Which was what we would probably equate with intelligence.
right? That's what I was getting at. Because, and the reason I use the house as an example is because you don't think of the foundation of a house as something that understands the contents of the house.
Right.
It's just what holds it up.
right.
And that's
So okay, so even so, the abstraction of the attic effect exists within the foundation cause imminently. That doesn't matter.
yeah.
That is true, but the foundation doesn't know that.
yeah.
And just because we terminate in a purely actual actualizer doesn't necessitate that the purely actual actualizer also knows what the attic is.
Right. Because the abstraction that is the attic,
Sure, it exists within its cause.
it exists within its cause, but because, and I've already lost how we figured out that the actual actualizer it does not need to have intellect. But for whatever reason we clarified with that, the abstraction of the attic does not require knowledge or intellect,
Right.
which
The abstraction
voids
exactly. The abstraction can exist imminently or virtually within the purely actual actualizer. It can. The premises are correct, but the conclusion of intelligence is not, I think,
which voids omniscience.
which gets omniscience off the table.
So we've got all good.
All good is off. Omniscience is off. Time outside of time is shaky, maybe. And that's all granting something purely actual that isn't something in nature like a quantum field.
And that also presupposed. God, what did we even talk about? It was something to do with. What did I say? With. Good Lord, this was maybe 10 minutes ago.
I don't know.
Shoot,
you said a lot between now and 10 minutes ago. On what notion? On what topic?
It was on the topic of intellect.
Oh,
and about existence. What exists? What
abstractions?
What can exist does.
Yeah.
And where do we go from there? What can exist does. And if it can, if it can exist, or if it does exist because it can,
yeah,
then that means it exists prior to intellect,
right? Minds prior to minds,
prior to minds and intellect, therefore, bring it home. What I forgot.
Well, you're talking about the point that we just made that debunked omniscience.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. So if something can exist, it does. B theory situation. If can exist, it does. Therefore, it exists because it can, which means it is independent. Which means it's independent. Its existence is independent of mind. It means its existence is independent of mind, right? Yeah. And because the abstractions the abstraction's existence is independent of mind.
Okay.
Right? Uh-huh. Therefore, the abstractions that exist within the purely actual actualizer by necessity of the effect needing to be within its cause, and that effect not available to be within the purely actual cause as material, so it has to be in it within as an abstraction,
right?
But abstractions do not require intellect. Therefore, the purely actual actualizer does not require intellect.
Debunking omniscience.
Therefore, yeah, debunking omniscience. Probably. I mean, yeah. So good was a easy one, just because that I think that was a bit dubious in my opinion. But time, who knows? We need a greater understanding of the nature of time and of the nature of immaterial things. I don't think we can ascribe omniscience to it either. And that is all granting that this purely actual thing exists as its own actuality rather than as something like a quantum field or something like that. Dang. So listen, I gotta say, I really like this argument. I know we just discussed problems we have with it. This is one of my favorite arguments.
Well, and you think about it this way.
It's a really good argument.
Think about it this way. It took us some pretzeling just to maybe, I don't know, knock some credibility off of some of it, maybe.
Right. But there is always going to be the problem, in my opinion, basically always. Even if we do grant all of that, there is still the problem of attaching it to religion ABC.
I don't think that that's possible.
I don't exactly. That is just a void that has never been crossed.
Without proof, really. This is not proof. This is, theoretical philosophy right here.
This is philosophy.
This is philosophy. And unless
this is philosophically proven as best we can.
Unless we see some God back.
Unless we see some God back walking through the Garden of Eden. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Then this is not what I would call proof.
Yeah.
So void of any objections, still has the connection problem. I don't see how that can't be the case. Even after we get into some of these objections, we don't see how it can be omniscient or fully good in a moral sense, or maybe existing outside of time. So it's got its problems. But that being said, if you go up to someone on the street and say, hey, convince me of God, this is going to do a really good freaking job of doing that. This is a hard argument to rebut.
Yeah.
It's a really good argument. I am a fan of it.
Well,
it is one of my favorites. I don't think it gets enough attention.
Take into account all of our criticisms just now. There's still some sort of supernatural being operating the universe.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
there still has to be a purely actual actualizer.
Yep.
By all ways that we can understand, whether that purely actual actualizer is like one layer below a quantum field, who knows? It has to exist. This chain cannot exist infinitely by necessity. It can temporally, cannot exist hierarchically. So there has to be a purely actual actualizer.
And that's crazy.
And that's crazy. Great argument. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know if you think we are out of our minds in regards to specifically the intellect rebuttal, because that one, if we missed something, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
There was a lot of loops with that one. So drop a comment. I want to talk about more arguments for God's existence because this is fun.
Yeah, there's a handful of them out there.
There's a lot of them out there. There's, I would say, an argument for God's existence by way of how many there is. So atheists lick my ass, basically.
Ligma.
Exactly. There's nothing to do about it. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.